A plane carrying some of gospel music's most beloved legends plummeted from the sky in rural Wyoming. 7 souls were aboard that small aircraft, and tragically, none survived. Just hours before the crash, they had posted a cheerful video on Instagram, full of smiles, laughter, and excitement as they prepared to join Bill Gaither's highly anticipated Alaska cruise. That innocent, joyful clip would tragically become their last. In the aftermath, Bill Gaither, the 88-year-old titan of gospel music, remained completely silent. Absolute silence. For months, he said nothing. Not a word, not even a brief acknowledgement of the devastating loss. And when he finally broke that silence, what he revealed shocked even his most devoted fans. But here's the thing many people don't realize. This tragedy is only a fragment of a much larger, more complex story. It's a story about an empire built on faith, about a man who has been celebrated as a saint and criticized as a sellout, and about secrets that have remained hidden for decades. Today, we are going to uncover the full truth about Bill Gaither, the controversies, the criticism, the unimaginable loss, and what his response to tragedy truly reveals about him. By the end of this video, you will see him in a way you never have before. This story runs deep, and it's not easy to hear. Picture a sunny summer day in Nebraska City, Nebraska. The weather is perfect, warm, and inviting. The Nellen family, Kelly Nellen Clark, her husband Jason Clark, and their daughter Amber Nellen Kistler, are standing outside a small plane recording a video for their Instagram followers. There is a genuine excitement in their voices and smiles, a kind of giddy anticipation only performers know when they are about to take the stage. In just a few days, they would be performing on Bill Gaither's prestigious Alaska cruise, joining gospel music's biggest names. Kelly jokes for the camera, her eyes sparkling with joy. Amber smiles, that radiant, heartwarming smile audiences had come to love. Jason waves, relaxed and happy, talking about grabbing a bite to eat before their next flight to Montana. It's a simple, ordinary family moment, one of those everyday snippets we all post on social media without a second thought. And yet, they had no idea this would be the last time they shared such a moment. The aircraft, a Pilatus PC-12, carried 7 people in total. When it went down in Campbell County, Wyoming, the crash was catastrophic. The impact was so severe that a massive fire erupted, and firefighters had to battle through the night just to bring it under control. The location of the crash was extremely remote, so isolated that investigators could not reach the wreckage immediately. They had to carefully plan how to access the area, essentially in the middle of nowhere. Meanwhile, the gospel music community was left reeling, struggling to process the news and anxiously waiting for answers that seemed impossibly slow to arrive. Kelly Nellen Clark wasn't just another gospel singer. She was gospel royalty. The Nellens had been inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 2016 and had achieved remarkable success. 20 songs reached the top 5 on gospel charts, 10 Dove Awards, and a total of 35 nominations. Their most recent Dove Award had come just 3 years before the crash, in 2021. Jason had joined the group in 1994, and Amber followed in 2002. Continuing the multi-generational legacy that had defined the Nellens from the very beginning. They weren't just talented musicians. They were beloved figures who had touched countless lives with their music. The tragedy is even more heart-wrenching when you consider this. Kelly's youngest daughter, Autumn Nellon Streetman, and her husband Jamie were not on that flight. They had traveled separately to Seattle, taking a different route. That split-second decision saved their lives. Now imagine the moment. You arrive in Seattle, excited about an upcoming cruise, ready to perform with your family. Perhaps you're checking into your hotel, texting your mom to see when she'll arrive. Then, someone from the Gaither organization finds you and delivers news that shatters your world. Your mother, father, and sister are gone. Not injured, not in a hospital, they are gone, killed instantly. Your entire family, wiped out in a single devastating moment. The Gospel Music Association released a statement expressing profound sorrow over the loss. Jackie Patillo, the association's president, sent condolences and prayers to Autumn and the entire Nellen family. The governor of Georgia also called for public prayers for the victims. Gospel artists from across the country gathered at the Seattle hotel where Autumn and Jaime had arrived, surrounding them with support, prayers, and songs, doing the only thing they knew how to do in the face of incomprehensible tragedy. They sang, they prayed, they wept together. Eventually, Autumn and Jaime returned home to be with Kelly's brother, Todd Nellen, and his wife Rhonda, beginning the painful and almost impossible process of facing the aftermath. Planning 3 funerals, sorting through personal belongings, and wrestling with the haunting question that has no answer. Why? Through it all, Bill Gaither had not said a word. For weeks, then months, he remained silent. People started to wonder. Some were patient, understanding that grief takes different forms, and perhaps Bill needed time to process his own feelings. Others were less charitable, questioning why the man who organized the cruise, who had known the Nellens for decades, remained publicly silent. The speculation grew, questions multiplied, and the longer the silence lasted, the higher the expectations for his eventual statement. Several months after the crash, Bill Gaither finally released a touching video tribute to the Nellens. Carefully crafted, it was filled with photographs and video clips spanning decades. In it, Bill reflected on special moments he had shared with the family over the years. His voice, warm with affection, yet heavy with loss, recounted memories from when Kelly's father, Rex Nellone, first appeared on a Gaither stage in the early days. He spoke about watching little Amber grow up, transform from a child following her family into a confident performer in her own right. He shared stories of inside jokes, long rehearsals, and spontaneous worship moments backstage. He reminisced about the final days together, the last time he saw them, the last conversations they had. His words reflected the way he had always tried to find meaning in tragedy, pointing people toward hope, even when hope felt impossible. The week Bill finally broke his silence was also significant, because it marked the first time Autumn Nellon Streetman joined the Gaithers for a new taping since the crash. Imagine the courage it took to step into a studio filled with gospel music's biggest names, knowing your mother, father, and sister should have been there, their empty spots glaringly obvious. Being there without them must have been almost unbearably painful. Yet it also represented a critical step forward, a statement that life, even in its heartbreak, must somehow continue. As expected, Bill Gaither described the tragedy as part of God's plan. He spoke of divine sovereignty, trusting God even when events defy understanding, and the promise that all things work together for good for those who love Him. For many fans, this message provided a framework for processing tragedy, a way to maintain faith despite senseless loss. It reassured them that God had not lost control, abandoned anyone, or made a mistake. But for others, his words felt insufficient, even offensive. How could a loving God plan for 3 talented, faithful people who dedicated their lives to ministry to die in a fiery plane crash? This prompted a theological debate, highlighting a fundamental divide in how Christians process tragedy. And Bill Gaither found himself at the center of that debate. What this episode revealed about Bill Gaither is crucial. Throughout his career, he has been more than a musician. He has become a theological voice for millions. When he speaks, people listen. When he interprets tragedy through the lens of faith, countless Christians shape their own understanding of suffering around his words. This influence carries enormous responsibility and scrutiny. Speak too much about God's plan and you risk sounding callous. Say too little, and people might think you've lost faith. Bill chose his words carefully, but he could never satisfy everyone. And here's something else you need to understand. Bill Gaither is not just any gospel singer. At 88, he stands as one of the few figures in gospel music to have built a true empire, a legacy that has made him both celebrated and controversial for decades. His life and career are entwined with immense triumphs, unimaginable loss, and an enduring impact on millions of listeners and performers alike. Let me ask you something. When does ministry cross the line into business? When does the act of sharing the gospel transform into selling the gospel? These are not simple questions, and they have shadowed Bill Gaither throughout his long career. What began as humble church gatherings eventually became something far larger, but not without scrutiny and controversy along the way. Bill Gaither's homecoming concerts started in an incredibly modest fashion. They were small church events, where quartets would sing and attendees would drop donations into a bucket. Nobody was getting rich. It was pure ministry, driven entirely by faith and a desire to share the joy of gospel music. But then something remarkable happened. The homecoming concept exploded. What began as simple gatherings evolved into massive productions. Arenas capable of holding thousands of people became the new stage. Professional lighting rigs, giant video screens, multiple camera crews, and sound engineers became standard. The lobbies of these events transformed into bustling marketplaces. Tables overflowed with CDs, mugs, T-shirts, songbooks, everything branded, everything priced. Critics, especially from smaller churches, began to argue that gospel music had become an expensive spectacle. They remembered the days when quartets sang for love offerings and worried that families on tight budgets were now being priced out. One newsletter went so far as to call it the Gaither money machine. Bill Gaither did not back down. He responded openly, explaining the financial realities behind these massive productions. Renting a 15,000-seat arena comes with enormous costs. Union workers need to be paid. Insurance is astronomical. Advanced ticket sales are necessary to avoid crippling debt. But what critics often overlooked is that a significant portion of the profits went toward funding new recordings for emerging artists, providing music scholarships, supporting mission work, and preserving gospel music history. Bill argued that sound business practices were not a compromise. They were the tools that allowed ministry to reach a larger audience. Over time, tensions eased. While ticket prices remained, additional seating options like cheaper upper-level tickets and group discounts for churches were introduced. Despite the debates, attendance continued to thrive. Arenas still filled up, proving that for most fans, the trade-off made sense. Better sound, comfortable seating, and professional production enhanced the experience, but the message remained paramount. However, if the commercialization controversy was divisive, what happened in Phoenix in 2002 escalated tensions to a new level. Bill and Gloria Gaither organized a homecoming gathering, bringing together gospel singers to share songs and personal stories. One guest, Marcia Stevens, was famous for a beloved worship song she wrote decades earlier. Years after her initial success, Marcia came out as gay and began leading worship in churches that affirmed same-sex relationships. When photos from the Phoenix event circulated, showing Bill and Gloria smiling next to Marcia and her partner, conservative newsletters erupted. Christian magazines were flooded with angry letters. Pastors urged congregations to boycott Gaither videos. Some accused Bill of being soft on sin, claiming he was compromising biblical truth. Bill's response was remarkably calm. He explained that inviting someone to perform at a homecoming event was about showing Christian love, not endorsing every aspect of their personal life. He reminded critics that Jesus often shared meals with people whose choices upset religious leaders. Bill made a crucial point. While he reaffirmed his traditional view of marriage, he also emphasized treating every guest with kindness and respect. He argued that it is possible to hold firm theological convictions while practicing radical hospitality. Most fans accepted this explanation, seeing the clarity in his beliefs. DVD sales dipped briefly but quickly recovered. Still, a small vocal group remained furious, with some former fans never purchasing another Gaither product. The controversy left wounds that have never fully healed in some circles. This episode illustrated how quickly misunderstanding spreads and highlighted Bill's consistent commitment to his core values. Open doors, warm hearts, and songs about grace, even when opinions clash. These controversies, commercialization debates, theological tensions, reveal who Bill Gaither truly is. He is not merely a gospel singer. He has built something unprecedented. The Gaither Music Company is more than a record label. It manages concert bookings nationwide, produces television shows that air globally, oversees an enormous catalog of copyrights, runs retail operations, operates professional recording studios, and even includes an animation studio led by Bill's son, producing content for younger audiences. This is a multi-million-dollar operation with real infrastructure and international reach. Most gospel artists struggle financially, driving beat-up vans and juggling second jobs. Bill Gaither created something entirely different, and this inevitably creates tension. Is he a visionary who provided gospel music with the resources to reach millions, or a businessman who turned worship into a product? The answer is likely both, and that complexity is uncomfortable for some. He built a business empire while preserving gospel music history, giving countless artists a platform, writing songs that comforted millions, and funding scholarships and mission work. Returning to the tragedies and controversies that have defined his life, such as the Nell family plane crash and the months of silence that followed, we see Bill Gaither as more than a gospel singer mourning lost friends. At 88, he has faced constant criticism, navigated theological disputes, maintained his values, and watched loved ones die, all while trying to make sense of it through faith. Is he perfect? No. Has he made decisions that warrant criticism? Probably. Has he preserved gospel music history, provided platforms for artists, and written songs that comfort millions? Absolutely. Has he built something that will outlast him? Without question, Bill Gaither's story is not simple. It is complicated, messy, and profoundly human, just like faith itself. He has been called a saint and a sellout, often by the same people. He has built an empire while preaching humility, enforced ticket prices while funding scholarships, and invited controversial guests while maintaining traditional beliefs. These contradictions do not necessarily make him a hypocrite. They may simply reflect the reality of being human. So, what is the truth about Bill Gaither? Perhaps it is this. He is a man who took his gifts seriously, built something remarkable with those gifts, made difficult choices, and continued singing about grace even when critics demanded judgment. He merged business and ministry in a way gospel music had never seen, survived controversies that could have ended lesser ministries, continued creating amid criticism, and kept believing even as tragedy struck. At 88, he is still here, still creating, still sparking debate, and still singing. The Nell tragedy reminded the gospel music community of life's fragility. Even faithful individuals die in terrible ways. Tragedy does not discriminate based on talent, awards, or impact. Bill's response, whatever one thinks of it, was consistent. He sought to point people toward God, even in the darkest moments. The commercialization controversies and theological debates surrounding him reflect larger tensions in American Christianity about the balance between faith and money, ministry and business, worship and entertainment. His stance has been consistent. Professionalism and business practices are not opposed to ministry. They can actually enhance it. The Phoenix controversy with Marsha Stevens highlighted the ongoing struggle within the church. How to love people while disagreeing with their life choices. Throughout everything, Bill Gaither has remained a figure of complexity, human, flawed yet visionary, consistently seeking to share grace through song and action. Bill Gaither's career has always walked a tightrope between devotion and innovation. His journey demonstrates the tension that arises when faith meets modernity, when ministry intersects with large-scale operations, and when deeply held beliefs are tested by societal change. Through the homecoming tours, the world could see the scale of his vision. Gospel music wasn't just surviving, it was thriving on a national and even global stage. But with growth inevitably came scrutiny, sometimes from people who longed for a simpler, quieter expression of worship. When quartets sang humbly for love offerings, even as critics raised their voices, Bill consistently emphasized a balance between purpose and practicality. He showed that ministry doesn't have to be small to be meaningful, and that professionalism can serve rather than replace spiritual authenticity. Ticketed arenas and merchandise tables were not signs of greed. They were tools to sustain a ministry capable of reaching far beyond a single church hall. These decisions allowed the Gaither Music Company to produce countless recordings, fund new artists, and even support initiatives that preserved gospel music's rich heritage for future generations. In this sense, business and ministry were not at odds. They were partners. But it wasn't just financial or logistical challenges that defined Bill's story. The Phoenix controversy surrounding Marsha Stevens revealed another side of ministry, the challenge of maintaining doctrinal beliefs while demonstrating unconditional Christian love. When Bill and Gloria welcomed Marsha and her partner to perform, they were met with intense backlash. Critics feared compromise, believing that smiling alongside someone living openly as gay implied endorsement of their lifestyle. Yet Bill's response was measured, rooted in scripture and profoundly human. He acknowledged his traditional stance on marriage while stressing that Christian hospitality means offering respect, kindness, and a stage for voices without necessarily agreeing with every life choice. In this episode, and many others, Bill showed that ministry involves nuance. It is not simply a matter of black and white rules, but of navigating complex moral and social landscapes with faith and compassion. The strong reactions, temporary drops in DVD sales, and lingering resentment from some former fans only underscore how deeply people care about gospel music and its spiritual leadership. Yet despite these challenges, the homecoming events continued to thrive, proving that most fans valued the music, the message, and the opportunity to connect with a community of faith. Through all of this, Bill Gaither's contributions to gospel music cannot be overstated. He created opportunities for artists who might never have been heard otherwise, nurtured young talent, and built infrastructure to sustain ministry at a scale few could imagine. His company, now a sprawling network of concerts, studios, retail operations, and global broadcasts, stands as a testament to his vision. Even the animation studio run by his son demonstrates a commitment to passing the message of gospel music to future generations in innovative ways. Yet his story is not just one of success. It is also a story of human fragility. The plane crash that took members of the Nell family shook him profoundly, prompting months of silence and reflection. His eventual tribute and public reflections on God's plan were controversial, misunderstood by some, yet consistent with the values he has lived by: faith, grace, and the pursuit of pointing people toward hope, even in tragedy. These experiences illustrate a truth that permeates his entire career. Life is unpredictable, ministry is complex, and leadership requires resilience in the face of criticism and loss. Bill Gaither is a man of paradoxes. He has been called a saint and a sellout, sometimes by the same individuals depending on the day and the circumstance. He has balanced ticket prices with scholarships, controversy with tradition, commercial success with spiritual authenticity. These apparent contradictions are not necessarily evidence of hypocrisy. They may simply reflect the difficulty of being human while pursuing a divine calling on a monumental scale. Ultimately, the story of Bill Gaither is one of persistence, vision, and unwavering dedication to both music and ministry. He has built something lasting, something that continues to touch lives around the world while navigating every storm that comes with public scrutiny. He is not perfect. He has made decisions that were criticized, and he has faced controversies that some never fully understood. Yet through every challenge, he continued to create, to lead, and to sing about grace. At 88, Bill Gaither remains a figure of inspiration and debate. He continues to produce music, organize events, and share his message with the world. His life embodies the complexities of faith, messy, human, full of contradictions, yet profoundly impactful. The tragedies, controversies, and achievements he has faced all form a portrait of a man committed to his calling, navigating a world where ministry and business, tradition and progress coexist in a delicate balance. Bill Gaither's story reminds us that ministry is not always simple. It requires hard decisions, thoughtful compromise, and a willingness to engage with the world as it is, not just as we wish it to be. It shows that love, grace, and professionalism can coexist, and that even amid criticism, tragedy, and misunderstanding, it is possible to maintain integrity, faith, and an enduring legacy. His life demonstrates that gospel music can grow, evolve, and reach millions without losing its soul, and that those who dare to lead in both faith and business will always face scrutiny, yet have the power to change the landscape of worship forever.